Hi, this is Audrey Lowell from My Planet, My Voice, a project of Northern California Public Media. Today, I have the privilege of interviewing Mr. Floyd Thompkins, Jr. Mr. Thompkins is a leader, educator, writer, nonprofit leader, and pastor in Marin City, California. Thank you for sharing your insights today. My first question for you is, what is the link between global climate change and economic disparity?
First of all, thank you for letting me be here today. And this is really important. It's actually a link that other people have explored. Specifically, I think 2 years ago, there was an article in the Harvard Gazette by Dr. Lieb, who actually said there are two things that you want to worry about in global warming. First of all, food spoilage, which is what particularly good food pantries are good at. And also then being able to address the question of inequality. Now, what happens with climate change, we think of it in terms of science, but in reality, when we're looking at all of the economic problems that happen, anytime poor people get poorer and people get more vulnerable, then they have to make choices. And the choices between, at least in the American context, is between medicine and food, or between housing and food, or between a lot of things in food. And so the food pantries become more vital in order to meet those needs. And as global warming has caused people to be less economically secure, then the food pantry crowd grows. Now, on the other end of things, because of global warming, then food supplies are also incredibly threatened. And there's been a number of studies saying, especially in the United States, that with the droughts and the weather that's happening, we're also seeing a diminishing in the food that's there also. Which means that we have more people coming to food pantries because of the economic disruption. And then we have a harder ability to get food from what we know as our normal places, so that the food pantry then has less food, more people coming to it. And so what's really important right now is we find places to get food from not only corporate sources, but also people more individually involved with spoilage. The way that I think we get the most growth in in what we need in food pantry is that we have to invent a way that people can get more food to food pantry through non-traditional ways.
Thank you. My next question is relating to that. How is climate change and that resulting economic disparity related to food insecurity?
Right. And so we know, according to the USDA, about 10% of the population right now is food insecure. And most of that, and many of that is among children. And since COVID, it rose, which is that economic displacement I talked about. With all of that happening, then food pantries became, at least here at St. Andrew, which is where we have our local food pantry, we doubled during COVID. And there is this curious thing that happens that people think that after COVID, everything was going to become back to its normal place very quickly. That is not happening. What is happening is that we looked at a 40 to 50% rise in the number of people coming to food pantry because of economic displacement. And we now don't have, it hasn't changed, mainly because the economic disruption of COVID, as we see in the economy, has continued. The weird thing is, the difficult thing is, because policy is not turn on a dime reality, is that much of that funding to try to secure food from other places was completely, I think as of 2 months ago, was completely cut off. So now we're faced with more people looking for food with less money. And you put climate change in there, which means an inability to get food from our traditional sources, and you understand a crisis is not only looming, but is happening right now. I also want to say something else, and you can cut this out if you want to. I also want to say something else, is that people don't understand that food pantries don't look like what we think they look like. This is not just the poorest of the poor. Actually, as economic, and this is a common thing, as economic insecurity becomes broader across the economic stroke, more and more people need to take advantage of food pantry because their choices become more problematic. So as, let's just say, a middle-class family who was doing rather well because of climate change, because of shifts in economic reality, now they're not doing as well. And now they're making decisions about food they have never had to make before. The Bay Area, astonishingly, and this is, I'm glad it's going to be Northern California, the average salary in Marin County is $170,000. The average salary in Marin City is $104,000. So there's $64,000 go. But we live on the same economy. So you understand the probability if you were poor before you became poor. But the astonishing thing that people haven't understood is that if you were not poor before, you are now faced with the problems that poverty, the problems and decisions that poverty ultimately did not present to you until now. So folks are starting to have to go to food pantry as never before. Employed, working people, people who have families, people who have medical conditions. Again, some of them spurred because of the environmental things that are happening. So we have more physical problems also. So as you can see, food pantries now have an expanding audience, and we don't know what we can do about it. But we must do something because people must be fed, and starvation is not acceptable in the United States.
How does this alter the role that food banks play in our communities, and specifically the role that the food pantry here plays in Marin City?
Very good question. Couple of things. As I've just talked to you about the expanding reality. If you go to the food pantry, we have an incredible, first of all, let me talk about the volunteers, right? We have an incredible number of amazing volunteers who make this work. We have a genius, which is Yacker on site, who is, and by the way, that is always the true. Every food pantry always has to have an advocate and someone whose passion drives us. In East Palo Alto, there's Nevada Butler. Here, there's Yacker. There are other people that do that. And all of these folks kind of show what community is. If you want to see where community happens anywhere, go to the food pantry. Because it happens when people are caring for one another without regard to any of the things that we usually judge each other's on. Because when I ran 4 food pantries in South Georgia. We had police people. We had folks who were on social services. We had even folks who were involved in the medical community. And hear the same reality. If you come to the food pantry here, you have people from all walks of life. You'll also have people from all religious traditions. And you'll have people who are truly astonished that they have to even be at a food pantry. And what's really important is that the volunteers understand that and say, we're not giving away food, we're ensuring dignity. And we're giving people choices. And we're trying to make you feel as though you're in an active community. And the expectation is that this will not be all of your life. And when displacement happens in your life, you'll give back again. And so the notion of food pantry being for people who are hurt or people who are less than just doesn't work here. And again, as we experience more problems economically, as we experience more problems food-wise, then in point of fact, more of us are going to have to temporarily and sometimes more on a continuous basis take advantage of food pantry. This is why we're excited, because some of our volunteers are now from Generation X and Z and whatever we want to call it, young people. Because it's very important for 2 reasons. One is that young people need to experience that type of community. There's no place else that you can experience community, people helping people in vulnerability without judgment. Again, when I was down in South Georgia, I did a junior high program, and they literally gave out tons of food. And it was easy for them because they thought, this is what you do. And that's what we're trying to teach young people. This is what you do. Also, here at St. Andrew, we have an amazing group of young people who show up and are beginning to volunteer because we need their vitality, we need their energy, quite frankly, we need their muscles to make this happen. And one of the things that I'm really, really excited about is a program or is a nonprofit that you know very well that actually helps with the spoilage. Remember, I said the only way that we, in a climate change environment, the biggest thing we can do, right, is stop spoilage, right? That is what we've known on a corporate level, which is why corporations then in the store say, if we don't sell something and it's still viable, we need to get it to food pantries to get to. But we have your organization of young people who come together and brilliantly said, the biggest spoilage that we have is what's happening in people's backyard. And these amazingly vivacious young people with a lot of energy go to backyards and they pick fruit and whatever falls to the ground, and instead of it leaving on the ground, right, they bring it to the food pantries and it changes lives. Now, what's really amazing about that is that it also means that someone who may think, and again for your generation, this is such a large problem. What do I do? Hope is something that is a spark that has to be blown upon. It'll be blown upon. And by blowing upon a spark of hope, what I mean is you have to have action, right? Because hope can become an oppression that can lead to depression. And I've seen young people that do that, right? Who say the world is so big and what's happening is so large. And if you don't do anything about it, you either become the hypocrite that goes to the marches and do nothing, or you become the cynical person that believes nothing can be done. In between that are the people like yourself who say, no, I'm going to do what I can. And in doing what you can, you run into what you can do. And what you can do is usually larger than you know you can do. So I remember meeting you as a 13-year-old coming over to the office, having this simple idea and thinking, it's going to be a nice idea. I hope it works out well. And then you took the tools of Facebook, which, old people think, we talk to each other. We didn't know it was actually a tool that you can raise money for. And then you took and found your friends and became a leader among your friends and allowed them to now flame the fan of hope. And now we have this idea germinating and populating with people of your generation in many different areas. How many other ideas are out there of people who understand that food insecurity, that global warming is a cry to say, fulfill my destiny as a human being. As a human being, what is broken is not a chance to complain, but a chance to figure out what is it in me that is bigger than this problem. Because intellectualism is not something that happens in school. That's only a part of it. It's what happens in school. It's knowledge and lived experience with grace and compassion that ends up with something called ingenuity and creativity. And your generation, I think, has learned that more than anything. If you don't move to help, then I think cynicism will go in. I believe fundamentally, and is absolutely true, when I look in the eyes of young people, I believe the answer for global warming, the answer for food insecurity, the answer for inequality is where it always has been, in people who are young and idealistic and hardworking, and who will run into the ingenuity and the power of their faith, their belief, and their hope.
Thank you. So you mentioned Food Picked with Love, the backyard food program that helps to support this food pantry, but what other local programs can teens get involved with?
Sure. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple programs. First of all, I want to do two things. First of all, there is your program, right? There's also a lot of community gardens around in every single city right now. There's a HEAL coalition here in Marin City, and they're happening in schools. But here's the problem. They're all old people trying to do it. And they're all the best solutions we have. The best solutions, however, are in your heads. So I'm going to say I would encourage people like yourself to do something you did, which is find the confidence and the courage to try something that occurs to you. Because we'll never know it, but you do. Because when you have your own confidence and courage, you can then be the leader of your generation. So volunteer in all those other programs. Come to the food pantry at our food pantry here, like on Sunday afternoon. We don't even, every Sunday we have to have people, and every food pantry does need this. They actually have to have more hands-on to it. So the first thing I would do is just volunteer at a food pantry. So you can get a sense of what it is and what it's about. And then the second thing I would do is to ask myself, what is it that's not being done, or what is it that I can do, right? And then go do it. So volunteer at a food pantry, volunteer at programs that are existing, become a part of this loving community of compassion. And then I believe, as a religious person, that the spark of God will ignite a fire of creativity, which it did in you and does in young people all the time. I'm old enough that many of the people that I worked in, the kids that I worked in the food pantry, are now older. It is very amazing. We did a study of those kids, and I think it's like 80% of them are in leadership of some nonprofit organization. You do not have to wait to grow up to make a difference in the world. You can make a difference in the world now, and if you start making a difference in the world now, the rest of your life you will be. You don't have to get qualified to be a good human being. You just have to be one.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Floyd. Is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you'd like to talk about?
One last thing I do want to talk about. It's always one last thing, right? One last thing I want to talk about. I also think that sometimes young people who themselves have been a recipient of food pantry, or who themselves have been classified as poor or not having enough, or living in an area that doesn't have enough, they think of themselves as only people that only people that are responsive to the actions of others. I will let you know something. Compassion is not something that you have to have enough money to have. Being creative and powerful, it does not have anything to do with where you come from. So if you're a young person who may not have a lot, but you want to help some people have something, go ahead and volunteer also. Volunteerism is not something that should have anything to do with economic placement. It has something to do with a heart condition. So I am simply saying, no matter whether you're poor or rich, or you consider yourself poor or rich, there is a place for you to give back, and in giving, you will receive the confidence to become all that you need to be. So I really want to make that clear, because I think sometimes if I were listening to this thing, especially on NPR and whatever, you start thinking, well, maybe it's only for a certain section of the population. But that would add to the myth of food pantries being only for poor people. But I don't want volunteerism to be that also. We have people who are struggling themselves who are part of the food pantry, and a part of dignity is to know that not only can you be helped, but you can be helpful. So I wanted to make sure we make that clear.
Thank you very much for your words today, and thank you for speaking with us. I hope others are as interested and inspired by your comments as I have been today.
Thank you very much. I'm inspired by you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.